Real English for your daily life.
Master English together.
January 1st. You write it down, get certified this year. It feels real. It feels possible.
And then March hits, and suddenly, certification feels impossible, and coding looks exciting.
May comes around and coding is boring, so you pivot to fitness. By August, you've got 3 abandoned goals and 0 results.
If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and you're not broken. This is one of the most common psychological traps people fall into, and today, we're talking about exactly that.
This is Everyday English Podcast. I'm Sara.
And I'm Noah. This is a B1 level episode, perfect for intermediate learners. Beginners, you're welcome too. We'll keep it clear and natural throughout.
Today's topic hits close to home for a lot of people. Why do we keep changing our goals? And more importantly, how do we know if we're making a smart adjustment or just running away from something hard?
There's actually a name for this tension. Psychologists call it the goal flexibility paradox. And once you understand it, the way you look at your own goals will never be the same.
We'll get into that, but first, quick question. And we want a fast answer, okay? 3 seconds.
3 seconds. Ready?
How many times have you changed a major goal in the last 12 months? Drop the number in the comments. 1, 3, more than 5.
No judgment. Truly. I'm guessing some of you are typing a number that's higher than you'd like to admit.
Stay with us until the end because we've got our word tour coming. 5 expressions that'll help you talk about goals, decisions, and commitment in real, natural English.
And there's one thing we discovered while researching this episode. Something that completely reframes how you think about giving up. We'll get to it. But first,
we're guessing you're listening to this on a commute or maybe lying in bed avoiding something you said you'd do today.
no shame. We've both been there. And later, we'll give you one small but powerful way to tell the difference between a smart pivot and a quiet escape. But first, let's get into the story.
Okay, so let's talk about someone. Let's call her Mia.
Mia is 28. She's smart, she's motivated, and every single January, she sits down with a fresh notebook and writes out her goals for the year.
And it's not like she picks easy goals. She commits fully. Last year, it was passing a professional accounting certification. She bought the textbooks. She signed up for the prep course. She told her friends about it.
She made the commitment out loud, which, by the way, is supposed to help. Psychologists say that when you tell people your goals, you feel more accountable.
But here's what happened. By February, the material was harder than she expected. The practice tests were brutal. She'd come home after work, open the textbook, and just stare at it.
And that staring feeling. You know that feeling when you open something you're supposed to do and your brain just refuses to engage.
Completely. So Mia started second-guessing herself. Maybe accounting isn't really for me. Maybe I chose this for the wrong reasons. Maybe I should be doing something more creative.
And that voice, that second-guessing voice, it sounds so reasonable. It doesn't say, I want to quit. It says, I've grown. I've evolved. I need something that aligns better with who I am now.
Which is a very sophisticated way of saying, this is hard and I don't want to do it anymore.
Exactly. And so Mia pivoted. She dropped the accounting course and signed up for a week's design boot camp. And for about 3 weeks, she was on fire. New notebooks, new energy, new identity.
But then the boot camp got hard too. The projects were more technical than she expected. The feedback from instructors felt harsh. And that same staring at the screen feeling came back.
And this time she told herself, design isn't my thing either. But fitness is something I've always wanted to prioritize. That's a real investment in myself.
So she canceled the boot camp, bought running shoes, downloaded 3 different workout apps, and for 2 weeks she ran every morning.
Until it rained for 4 days straight, and she missed a few sessions, and then the streak was broken. And then it just quietly stopped.
By August, Mia had 3 abandoned goals, 3 sets of unused materials, and one very heavy feeling in her chest that she couldn't quite name.
It wasn't laziness. It wasn't stupidity. It was something much more specific and much more painful. She genuinely couldn't tell anymore whether she was making smart trade-offs or just escaping.
And that's the part that really hurts, isn't it? Not the quitting itself, but the not knowing, the wondering, am I someone who adapts intelligently, or am I someone who just can't stick with something?
And here's what makes it even harder. Both stories feel identical from the inside. When you pivot away from something difficult, your brain doesn't announce, warning, this is avoidance. It says, this is growth. This is self-awareness. This is you honoring your needs.
So how do you tell the difference? That's the question Mia kept asking herself. And honestly, it's the question a lot of us are walking around with quietly every day.
Let's go a little deeper into what was actually happening in Mia's brain. Because this isn't just about willpower or discipline. There's a real psychological pattern here.
When we set a goal, we're making a commitment based on how we imagine the future will feel. We picture ourselves succeeding. We picture the reward. And that imagined version of success feels genuinely motivating.
But then reality shows up. And reality has friction. It has boring repetition. It has days when you make no visible progress. It has moments when you feel genuinely incompetent, like you're the only person in the room who doesn't get it.
And that gap between the imagined version and the real experience, that gap is where most goals die. Not because the goal was wrong, but because the discomfort of the gap feels like a signal that something is wrong.
But actually, that discomfort is just what learning feels like. It's what growth feels like. It's completely normal. But our brains are wired to interpret discomfort as danger, as a sign to stop, to retreat, to find something safer.
And so we second guess ourselves. We start asking, is this really the right path? Am I wasting my time? What if there's a better option I'm missing?
And the cruel irony is, the smarter you are, the better you are at constructing a logical argument for why quitting is actually the wise choice.
You can rationalize anything if you're articulate enough.
Absolutely. Mia didn't tell herself, I'm giving up. She told herself, I'm pivoting strategically. And those two things can look identical on the outside, but they come from completely different places on the inside.
One comes from new information. The other comes from discomfort. And the trade-off you make in each case is completely different. In one case, you're trading a less effective path for a more effective one. In the other case, you're trading long-term growth for short-term relief.
And short-term relief feels amazing for about 3 weeks. And then the new thing gets hard too. And the cycle starts again.
Mia knew this somewhere deep down. That's why the feeling in her chest by August wasn't just disappointment. It was something closer to a loss of trust in herself, like she'd broken a promise so many times that she'd stopped believing her own words.
And that erosion of self-trust, that's the real cost of the cycle. Not the unfinished courses, not the unused running shoes. It's the quiet voice that starts saying, why bother committing to anything? You'll just change your mind again.
And by the way, there's a phrase for that specific feeling, that moment when you can't tell if you're being smart or just scared. It's called second-guessing yourself, and we'll break it down properly in our word tour later.
But here's what we want you to hold on to before we move forward. Mia's story isn't a story about failure. It's a story about not having the right framework yet. And that is completely fixable.
So here's the part where we talk about the goal flexibility paradox. And I want to be honest, when I first heard this concept, my immediate reaction was relief. Like, finally, someone is naming this thing.
The idea comes from research on how successful people actually relate to their goals, and the finding is counterintuitive. The most successful people aren't the ones who never change their goals. They're the ones who know when and why to change them.
Which sounds simple. But wait, I actually want to push back on this a little.
Oh?
Because here's my concern. If we tell people it's okay to change your goals when you have good reasons, aren't we just giving everyone a very elegant excuse to quit? Everyone thinks their reasons are good. Mia thought her reasons were good every single time.
That's a fair challenge, and I don't want to dismiss it. But I think the key word is framework. It's not about whether your reasons feel good. It's about whether they pass a specific test.
What kind of test?
There are two questions. First, has something genuinely changed in your external situation? New information, new constraints, new evidence that this path won't work? Or second, has nothing changed except your comfort level?
But that's still too easy to manipulate. I can always tell myself I have new information. I can always frame discomfort as evidence. That doesn't solve the problem. It just gives the avoidance a fancier name.
I hear you. And you're right that self-deception is real. But here's what I've tried personally, and it actually works. The commitment contract. Before you start any goal, you write down in advance specifically what would count as a legitimate reason to stop, and what would count as a legitimate reason to stop, and what would count as avoidance.
So you're essentially making the decision before the discomfort arrives.
Exactly. Because when you're in the middle of the hard part, your judgment is compromised. You're not thinking clearly, you're thinking emotionally. But if past you already defined the rules, present you has something to check against.
Okay, I can see the logic, but I'm still not fully convinced. Because what about people who genuinely chose the wrong goal to begin with? Sometimes you don't know a path is wrong until you're on it. Sticking with something just because you committed to it, that's not wisdom, that's stubbornness.
And that's exactly why the paradox has two sides. Flexibility is part of the framework, not the enemy of it. The goal isn't to never change direction. The goal is to change direction for the right reasons, at the right time, with full awareness of what you're trading off.
So the trade-off has to be conscious, not reactive.
Right. Reactive quitting feels like relief. Conscious pivoting feels like a decision. Those two things feel different in your body, if you slow down enough to notice.
That's actually a really useful distinction. But here's my last pushback, and I think this one matters. What about people who've been in the cycle so long that they've lost the ability to tell the difference? Mia, by August, couldn't feel the distinction anymore. She was numb to it. What do you say to her?
You say you don't need to fix your goal setting. You need to rebuild your relationship with discomfort first, because the cycle isn't really about goals. It's about what happens in your nervous system when things get hard. And that's something you can work on separately before you set the next goal.
So the starting point isn't pick a better goal. It's learn to sit with difficulty long enough to tell if it's meaningful or just uncomfortable.
And that's the cognitive shift that actually breaks the cycle. Not more discipline, not a better planning system, just a longer pause before you decide that hard means wrong.
I think a lot of people needed to hear that. Because we've been told for so long that the answer is more commitment, more willpower, more structure, and sometimes the answer is actually just more patience with yourself.
And more honesty. The kind of honesty that asks, am I changing this because I've genuinely learned something? Or am I changing this because I'm scared of finding out what I'm capable of?
That second question is the one that sticks with something. That's the one we're sitting with tonight.
And if you want to stick with us, we appreciate every like and follow. It genuinely helps more people find this conversation.
Okay, before we move on, we've been throwing around some really specific words today. Words like pivot, commitment, trade-off.
And those aren't accidental. Every single one of those words is something you can use right now in real conversations about goals, decisions, and change.
So it's time for our word tour. 5 expressions, all from today's episode.
Let's break them down, one by one.
So the first word that kept coming up today was pivot. And I love this word because it sounds so professional, but it's actually used everywhere.
Right. A pivot is when you change direction but not randomly. It's a deliberate shift. In business, a startup pivots when the original idea isn't working and they try a new approach. In real life, Mia pivoted from accounting to design.
But here's the thing, pivoting only counts as a real pivot if there's a reason behind it. Otherwise, it's just wandering.
Exactly. So you might say, after 6 months of data, we decided to pivot our strategy. Or more personally, I pivoted from marketing to product management because I realized I loved solving problems more than promoting them.
It's a word that carries intention. That's what makes it powerful. Now, commitment. This one came up a lot today, and I think it's worth slowing down on.
Commitment isn't just, I said I'd do it. It's a deeper psychological contract with yourself. When Mia made her commitment out loud to her friends, she was trying to create accountability. But commitment without a clear framework, it's fragile.
You can use it in so many ways. I made a commitment to finish the course no matter how hard it got. Or she's not ready to make a commitment to the relationship yet. It works for goals, relationships, jobs, anything that requires sustained effort over time.
And that sustained effort always involves our next word, trade-off. A trade-off is what you give up in order to get something else. Every decision has one.
When Mia switched from accounting to design, the trade-off was she gave up months of progress in one area to start from zero in another. That's not automatically wrong, but it has to be conscious.
In everyday conversation, you'd say, there's always a trade-off between speed and quality. Or, working from home has trade-offs, more flexibility, but less separation between work and rest.
It's such a useful word because it removes the judgment. It doesn't say this is good or this is bad. It just says, here's what you're exchanging. Now decide if it's worth it.
Which brings us to stick with something. This is a phrasal verb and it's deeply conversational. It means to continue doing something even when it gets difficult, to not abandon it.
And honestly, this is the one I personally struggle with most. It's easy to start things. Sticking with them is the whole challenge.
You'd hear this in sentences like, I know it's tough, but try to stick with it for another month. Or, she stuck with her training even when she got injured. That's real dedication.
What I love about this phrase is that it implies the difficulty is expected. It's not keep going because it's easy. It's keep going because it's hard. That reframe matters.
And our final expression today is one we mentioned earlier, second guess yourself. This is when you start doubting a decision you've already made. You go back and question it. You wonder if you chose wrong.
And we all do this, especially after a big decision. Did I pick the right job? Should I have stayed in the old city? Was that the right call? That constant internal questioning, that second guessing yourself?
The phrase works in both directions. Don't second guess yourself. You made the best decision with the information you had. Or, I keep second guessing myself every time things get hard, and I can't tell if that's wisdom or fear.
That second example is basically the whole episode in one sentence.
It really is. And that's what makes these 5 words so connected: pivot, commitment, trade-off, stick with something, second guess yourself. They're not just vocabulary. They're a whole framework for thinking about how you make decisions and how you stay accountable to yourself.
Use them in your journal, in conversations, in your own head when you're standing at a crossroads. They'll help you think more clearly and speak more naturally. So, here's what we covered today. We started with Mia, someone who kept changing her goals and couldn't figure out if she was being smart or just scared. And I think a lot of us recognized ourselves in her story.
We talked about the goal flexibility paradox. The idea that successful people aren't the ones who never change direction. They're the ones who know why they're changing direction. And that distinction changes everything.
If you're walking away with just one thing today, let it be this. The next time you feel the urge to switch goals, pause. Ask yourself one honest question. Has something genuinely changed? Or has only my comfort level changed?
And here's something practical you can try this week. Before you commit to your next goal, write down in advance what a legitimate reason to stop would look like. Decide the rules before the discomfort arrives. That one habit alone can break the cycle.
The second thing I'd suggest, and this one's personal for me, is to separate the goal from the timeline. Sometimes we don't need to abandon the destination. We just need to give ourselves more runway to get there.
And the third thing, be honest about the trade-offs. Every pivot costs something. Knowing what you're giving up doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means you're doing it with open eyes.
These aren't easy habits, but they're worth building because the alternative cycling through goals without ever finishing one that costs something too. It costs your trust in yourself.
And that trust is worth protecting.
Before you go, we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, have you ever changed a goal and later realized it was avoidance, not strategy? What gave it away?
We read every single comment. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.